welcome back to Radio Wasteland, the best in paranormal talk radio. I'm your host, Chauncey Hallworth. This is my co-host, Kara Kittrick.
Hello.
Kara, do you have any news for us today?
Yes, I do. So, top story this week, Harvey Weinstein has coronavirus, which, I mean, we'll discuss it. Many of the details are fuzzy. It doesn't appear that he was tested because he was showing symptoms, but rather because he was being held in one facility where there was an ongoing outbreak, and he was going to be transferred to another on account of being convicted and all. So they wanted to make sure he wasn't a vector, which he was, and a rapist, who, again, has coronavirus. A representative for the Roswell UFO Festival announced that the festival, scheduled for early July, is still on, despite the coronavirus outbreak making it a spectacularly bad idea for people from all over to flock to a small town and gather in crowds. The thinking so far appears to be that perhaps the danger will have abated by then. Well, stranger things have happened, at least one of them in Roswell, New Mexico. And finally, there's an official petition on change.org to make Mothman the West Virginia state bird. Now, I'm not from West Virginia, but obviously I went ahead and signed it anyway. The current state bird is the northern cardinal, which I think we can all agree is a lame and stupid choice. Back to you, Chauncey.
Well, I am not surprised that there's a double dose of coronavirus news in the news. How do you get away from that? So let's start at the first one. Harvey Weinstein has coronavirus. Ever since I found this out, the song that's been stuck in my head is Instant Karma by John Lennon.
Sure.
And so it's just so funny. When I heard it, it was funny. Now, don't get me wrong. The guy's a rapist, and he's fully taken advantage of tons of people. But as a person who cares about people, I don't wish ill will on anybody. So I have this hard problem in myself where half of me is just all like, yeah, screw that guy. And the other half of me is like, you're a terrible human being, Chauncey. So I'm having a hard time rectifying, sort of putting the two of these together, concatenating these into me. But,
well, I hope he doesn't infect anyone else. It would just be classic Harvey Weinstein if his last act in this world was to give coronavirus to some nonviolent drug offender who, did nothing wrong.
Yeah,
that would classic Weinstein.
Some 22-year-old girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Oh, as if they, yeah. I guess if she was a prison guard, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Maybe there are multiple people in the chain.
Maybe if he were to force his disease on people on purpose.
That also sounds like him, frankly.
Yeah, that's his MO. That's Harvey. We know that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Classic Harvey.
And then outside of that, the canceled Roswell, New Mexico festival. That's sad. Our friend William
It is
Pullen.
sad. We've talked about it a few times. William talked about it, yeah.
Yeah, he goes every year. That's like his social outlet. He saves up every year to go see his friends.
To be clear, though, it is not canceled.
It will be.
Well, yes, but as of now, they're saying it's still on.
Right.
That's the news. Because I think, like I said, they're counting on the outbreak kind of being over by then, which obviously it won't be.
Well, I guess it might be. There's still a chance that there's a seasonal factor in this. There's still a chance that, and if we can,
but Australia, it's summer in Australia right now. They still have a rip-roaring outbreak. The southern hemisphere is having coronavirus.
Yeah, but God's been trying to wipe Australians off the earth for decades.
I mean, I want to make fun of you and say that's not a good argument.
I'm kidding.
But that's kind of a good argument.
They do have all the poisonous animals.
I mean, Australia has... Earlier this year, much of the country was sterilized with flame. So.
Yeah, that's true.
And by country, I mean continent.
Man, the most messed up thing, this is totally off topic. The most messed up thing about that is, didn't we talk about the cats? Like the 2 million cats? So in Australia, when the fires were happening, they had a huge problem with animals who were trying to survive that were hurt and injured coming out of the fires. Like 2 million house cats like swarmed on the area in order to eat
That's
the
terrifying.
weak. Yeah. Literally 2 million.
2 million house cats is, I don't think I could take them.
No, that'll darken the skies, man. That's like
just a wall, wall of fur and claws.
Yeah, it's crazy town. Crazy. And then the last thing in the news, change.org, West Virginia, the new bird. I agree the northern cardinal is, everything's relative.
Can't hold a candle to Mothman, though, right?
Maybe in a world of crows and sparrows, the northern cardinal is an impressive bird. But, now is
Mothman can keep pace with cars. Mothman is
Point Pleasant even in West Virginia?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yes. That's why they're trying to make Mothman.
That's what I was thinking, but I thought it was because we had Lon Strickler on talking about Chicago. I thought they were a little closer.
No. The Chicago sightings are very interesting because it's very similar to the Mothman sightings, just in Chicago all of a sudden, and more than a half century later. You get all these crazy Mothman sightings in West Virginia for a few years, then nothing for 50 years, and then a ton of sightings in Chicago now. Make of that what you will. I don't know what to make of it.
Unfortunately, this is probably in the news segment. It's not the greatest place to put this out there, but I seem to remember wasn't in another country that got Bigfoot on as an endangered animal.
I don't know.
There've actually been like 2. I caught this in the news twice, and I chased the article back, and they were real. Like somehow they pushed this through,
I vaguely remember what you're talking about, actually, now that you mention it, but I don't really remember the details. I know that, like, Scotland has a national animal as a unicorn or something like that. So naming fictional creatures to high office, relatively speaking, not unprecedented.
It might not be fictional, too. I mean, you can't say that you've never asked yourself what a unicorn hamburger tastes like.
I don't know. I feel like there's so many accounts of unicorns. Like, when you go back to the original accounts of unicorns from the Middle Ages, they're talking about rhinos.
Rhinos? What a weird comparison.
It's obvious when you read the accounts, because they don't talk about, they're like, it's like a horse. Right. It's really fat and it's huge and it has one horn. It's when you really look into it, unicorns are just
all right. So it ended up being all magical and mystical, but here's how I see this going. I saw a horse with a single horn and somebody else going, that's so majestic and magical. And then the person who did the sighting is going, it kind of needed to go on a diet. It looked like it had mange. And it was really pissed off. There's nothing magical about this.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. The questing beast, the description, long snake-like neck, horse-like hooves, but with a leopard's hide. This is a giraffe.
Okay, well, I want you to keep this open-mindedness going, because up next here on Radio Wasteland, our guest is Ronald Morehead, and we are talking about Quantum Bigfoot. Is Bigfoot
finally
an alien visitor traveling through dimensions? Come on back, you're listening to Radio Wasteland. right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland and our guest, Ronald Morehead. We're talking about the Quantum Bigfoot, bringing science and spirituality together. How are you doing this evening, Ronald?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking. Right. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming. You know, I think the very first question one has is, you know, there's those combinations that you just never expect to see in the wild, and that would be quantum and Bigfoot,
yeah.
together in a title. So maybe you can just start us out by explaining why the Quantum Bigfoot. What are we getting at here?
Well, what we're getting at is, as many of your listeners may know, I encounter these creatures in the Sierra Nevadas to the east of you there, south. And this was in the 70s, and we started recording their vocalizations and having some mysteries around them, too, which I didn't talk about for a long time. Just anomalies, things you couldn't explain with classical science. Al Berry, who was the investigative reporter from Reading, actually. He worked for the Record Searchlight newspaper then. And he was invited. We invited him to camp, thinking he was going to find a hoax because it's kind of an incredible story. But he heard the sounds and thought they were worth listening or investigating. So we took him into camp in 1972. He ended up recording sounds and still thinking they were hoaxes. Somebody had to hoax us, but this is 8,400 feet elevation, and it's 8 miles into the wilderness. It's really an imposing trail to get to, an imposing area. Gorgeous area, though. It's beautiful. And so anyway, he went in, and he had some experiences, too, along with us. And he ended up having those recordings checked by Dr. Curlin, Professor Curlin at the University of Wyoming. He did a year-long study and established the sounds were credible. They weren't manipulated. They weren't speeded up, slowed down.
Or identifiable, I assume.
They were above and below and in between, all over the scope of vocalizations and way outside the human scope of what we can do. And that was interesting, but it wasn't what academia needed. So we kept on, but there was other anomalies going on up there, lights and sounds that we could not identify, very, very unusual sounds outside of what you could explain with classical science, like I say. And Al Berry had a master's degree in science, and he said that whatever you do, try to stay with science on this thing, or you'll never be able to get anybody to listen to you. So I started reaching into, well, how does science explain this? How do they explain lights going by you and things like that going on? And these sounds like your camp's being tore apart. You look outside this little shelter we had there, and nothing's changed. And you don't know how to put your finger on that. It's like trying to nail a jello to the wall, you know. So anyway, that got me into looking into quantum physics, because I realize, and everybody does, I think, we live in a three-dimensional environment, a three-dimensional world, but there's more dimensions according to physics. So I think it was Nikola Tesla said that what one man calls God, another man calls quantum physics.
Yeah.
So those who have thrown religion away and outside the door because they didn't go with religion, believe it or not, you're a spiritual being. According to Stephen Hawking and according to Einstein, energy, which we are all made of at the most minute level, does not die. It only changes form. So religions will call that heaven. Quantum physics calls that dimensions. There are at least 11 established by mathematics of quantum physics. And so anyway, I started looking into that, and it started coming together for me. It started answering some of the questions I had. So, and I think, and it was Dr. Who was the astronaut? He was Mitchell, Edgar Mitchell. He said it takes classical and quantum sciences together to have clear perception. I think that's a pretty good thing to hear.
Yeah, I mean, quantum science, you know, is science in its most extreme form of basically measuring things without using any of your human senses.
Yeah, it's probably the least intuitive in some ways, because you're dealing with, you know, small scales where we just don't have the experience of how it works exactly.
So I get what he's saying, because there's no way to really understand. I mean, even me setting my hand on the table, we don't understand what's going on without looking quantumly at it. So the way we're going here is that Bigfoot is interdimensional.
That's pretty much what we're trying to say here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I believe that because I've interviewed people for 50 years now. This happened to me. I've been doing this for right at 50 years, and it just I hear these people say they saw one disappear, just kind of like a hot spot in the pavement or something. You see it evaporating up. For a long time, I discarded that because nothing can just disappear, but that's not true. Things can go out of our perception. We see within a frequency of light. Everything is frequency, either energy, frequency, and vibration. So that's just the laws of physics. And when you get into what we are as energy beings, it just comes around, and you get to kind of understand it a little bit, because if these things can somehow change their matter into energy, you wouldn't see them anymore. We only see within light's frequency, and that's very small. Animals can see better than we can as far as frequencies go, and you get into all the frequencies that are out there. It's just makes kind of sense to me, and that's why I got into it. So
yeah. So the first thing that this makes me think of is over the years I've heard two parallels to this. Somebody saying, I don't remember where I heard it. Somebody saying that Bigfoot was an interdimensional being that was looking for gold specifically, is what this person said. And then on the other side,
that's right.
on the other side, there is somebody saying that the Loch Ness Monster is actually traveling through portals because of quartz in the ground, allowing it to travel through time, basically. So I guess my question with what you're thinking is the dimensional travel that you propose that Bigfoot is doing, is he doing it on purpose or is it accidental?
I think it's on purpose. He can change his vibrational frequency to a higher level and go out of our perception. And
so would we consider him sentient?
Oh, very much so.
So not like an animal, but like
he's sapient, like us.
Sapient. Yeah, there you go.
He's probably a hybrid. Most of them are. Let me say this up front, too. I don't believe they're all of the same genome, because we all pretty much believe aliens have been here over eons. We've been visited by UFOs. They're being reported now quite regularly. And I think that probably different types of aliens have corrupted or manipulated the DNA of different type beings on this earth. Primate manipulated them. They have attributes that we are trying to understand now. And that's where the dogman comes from, I think, because they can manipulate an animal too. And look at the Egyptian history, and you can see, a dog head on a man, or you see a unicorn, whatever. Yeah, but I think that's all. That's got a core of truth to it. If you start looking into it, or what really makes sense, and if you look even at the biblical history or historical history like that, you got alien beings corrupting the genome of humans. And that's what brought in the giants. And if you want to get into the religious part here, it gets into the Nephilim, which were giants, and they were corrupting the human genome, which basically I think there's a hybridization program going on now, I believe, and so does most of the MUFON people that I'm acquainted with. Think there's probably a hybridization program going on by aliens, and that gets their genome, their species, indoctrinated into this atmosphere, this environment, this Earth's environment. I'm not sure they do so well. I don't know. It's all speculation now. Of course, lots of things I'm saying is speculation, but it's based on 50 years of researching this. I think that they probably have done that and are doing it now. A lot of people claim abductions, and there's been several people have had implants put in. It's been taken out. I've seen the operation of that one time by Dr. Lear, who's passed away now, but they've taken out they claim they were abducted, and they've taken out little implants in them. So what's that doing? Is it changing DNA? Is it just them keeping track of them? But a lot of people claim abductions, and you just either got to think they're all lying or believe them one way or the other, or they're delusional. I mean, they're just not lying, but they're delusional. But I don't think so. I know some of these people personally, and they're very credible sounding.
Right. I imagine that with MUFON people, they tend to try to, or I imagine that they tend to try to chase paperwork stuff that that a Bigfoot that's considered a sapient alien is maybe a hard pill to swallow for some of these people because they kind of view it like an animal. Do you find that this is something that people in that field are receptive to?
Yeah, they do. They think it's an animal. A lot of researchers think it's just an animal running around the woods, and they got camera traps sitting out there, which aren't doing them much good, but occasionally they get a glimpse of something. There's a lot of money being made there from the people that sell the camera traps.
Right, yeah.
But I know.
I wonder if they're like the evil corporate guys behind Big Bigfoot, pushing camera traps.
These researchers are well-intentioned. They're good people. I know them.
I know they are.
And a lot of them are just going the classical way like I used to. And until you've had experiences like I've experienced, and it's more than once, with these anomalies that goes on around them, you can't open your mind up to what could be. And I just really try to encourage these people to open their minds and realize there's more going on than what they can perceive with their eyes.
Right. Well, you alluded to your experience, your initial experience from back in the 70s, and you alluded to it to being quite a tale. Tell me that tale.
Well, the first experience or all of them? I mean, I could go on.
At the beginning,
last one was in 2016. So
at the beginning of our conversation, you alluded to one that was extreme, truly unbelievable. But let's go with the first one. That's probably always the most shocking.
Well, they're very aggressive sounding. We think we might have been in their territory. Again, we're 8 miles in the wilderness. This camp has been there since the 50s. The Johnsons have been there hunting since the 50s, 58 when they started. So we're not sure if these things have been watching them and just observing them and came in for the food that one night. And that's what started it all, because I found the track and in the mud. And it just it frightens you a little bit because the sounds are very aggressive. And they, of course, didn't have recorders. They're up there just speculating, watching the camps, the deer population, what have you. So they came out, told the rest of us, told the other hunters. I wasn't a hunter at the time, and they went up and experienced the same thing. These things came back in, and you hear the chest beating, you hear the big snarling sounds, and wow, it really throws you because the amplitude is so big. One of the guys got scared off. He just left the next day, left a note, say, "I'll see you guys at home." He took off. It just frightened him so much. He was very religious, religious. And he didn't know where to put this in his religious circles, because the Nephilim are not around anymore, right?
And they were in the book of Enoch for the most part. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Which is not canonized, but it's acceptable. A lot of people accept it. Bible scholars do.
The Apocrypha. Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, you get into that, Greek mythology and all that, and it goes on. And I just encourage people to check into it besides just close their mind saying this is a woo-woo or something, because it's not woo-woo. Quantum physics is the way things actually work throughout the universe, from the most minute level of our existence all the way through the end of the universe. So somebody answered me the question of how far it is to the end of the universe, and that'll squeeze your mind a little bit.
Yeah, the answer is beyond that, there's nothing, so it's all the way. The answer is all the way.
There you go. Good answer.
All of it.
However far it is, that's how far it is. Yeah, okay, so what do these things sound like? We've talked about how terrifying the sound is. I don't expect you to hoot and holler into your mic, but can you describe to me what that sound is?
No, you have to hear it.
Really?
I should have sent you some sound bites. I got them. They're very available, and I could have done that. But still, if you hear it, it sounds like just something, and you hear them talking to each other or communicating in a very aggressive, very rapid. That's the best way to describe it. They're very rapid, very high pitched. I shouldn't say high pitched. this rapid is the best way. And that's the same. Albert Ostman, supposedly in 1924, was kidnapped by a Bigfoot and held captive for 6 days. That's in John Green's book, The Apes Among Us. And he witnessed him before he escaped, talking. And the story has been deemed very credible because he went into such detail of how he escaped and all of the things he went through. He said they were chatting amongst themselves. So that means they were communicating. Well, all animals communicate, but these things communicate with a language. And a cryptolinguist, Scott Nelson, got a hold of my sounds in 2008, asked if he could study them. He just by accident found them on the BFRO, and he heard it, and he thought he heard language within the sounds. So he studied them, came out and actually interviewed me and Al Berry, and found the context of the sounds, what was going on, and he went back and studied them. And he made a statement. He said, these things have a complex language. And he's a Navy cryptolinguist, retired from the Navy as a cryptolinguist. He studies and teaches foreign languages now in Missouri, and very credible. I didn't know a guy like that existed, but when he came forth and said that just brought it to another level again, because according to Dr. Lieberman, 1968, he made a statement, only humans have the vocal capability, which means the hyoid bone here, which connects to the tongue, nerves into the brain, which gives us the creative sapient talk we're doing now in this state. So another animals on the face of this planet is supposed to have that attribute, just humans. So everything communicates, but not with language like we're doing now.
Yeah, I read some article that basically said that chimps had the ability to do it, and then it used their vocal cord structure and structured the chimp and created what the chimp would sound like if it was able to talk. And for some totally just sadistic reason, they had it say something like, "Will you marry me?" And
yeah,
so
it was pretty horrifying.
I would play it over and over to my wife, and it would just absolutely just terrify her.
Any takers on that one?
Stop doing it. Yeah. So in your writings and research, you talk about 4 types of Sasquatch communication. What is that referring to?
Well, I don't know that I talked about 4 types of communication, but there are types of communication. Some of it is stick structures, which we weren't looking for up there, but a lot of people come out with that now. They look for stick structures,
I get it.
Which is a way of telling another one, following you, which way you're going or what to do, or something like that, if they're of the same mindset. You've got that. You've got mind speak, which a lot of people ascribe to that because we all have mind speak. It's who we are. I mean, telepathy, if that exists, which it does, we've had sense of things, and science doesn't know how to quite answer that. Quantum science does. And you've got, of course, the verbal communication like I've experienced and like I've recorded. So that's 3. What's the 4th one? Let's see. I don't know. There's 3.
Yeah.
Well, 3's plenty.
Well, I don't know if some of these sightings are accurate. The 4th one would be pheromones, I guess.
The what?
Pheromones.
Oh, there you go. Well, pheromones is a way of communicating, it's a way of attracting, infrasound's another one. If we don't hear those things or see those things ourselves, but I know when I run into something like, I call it a force field in my book, Voices in the Wilderness, Warren Johnson and I were walking up to where one of these things had to be behind this huge tree that we was walking towards. We heard him sounding off while I was inside the shelter, and we jumped out. We thought, well, we'll see this thing run away because we can kind of bowl then because these things weren't eating us and weren't carrying us away. So we thought we was going to be safe. We start walking up there. We're probably 15 feet apart, and all of a sudden we both get stopped by what I describe as a force field, like you see in Star Trek or something. It couldn't move forward. And he looked at me, and I don't know what I can't go anymore. And I said, I can't either. And it had to be behind that tree right there. So I mentioned this to Dr. Leroy Fish, who has now passed away too, and he said, we can't deal with your emotions and your feelings and stuff like that. I said, well, we weren't afraid at that time. We were just walking up to wanting to see this thing run away. He said, well, it has to be the pheromones or infrasound. Infrasound will affect humans, and that's sounds that we can't hear, but that's been used throughout, I think Hitler used that to control some crowds sometimes, infrasound. ultrasound is above what we can hear. That's what dog whistles are made and stuff like that. Pheromones only work within the same species. So sure. At the time, I thought it has to be infrasound that stopped us, because something stopped us. And I mean, it happened to me one other time in the woods too, when I wasn't even thinking about Bigfoot. I was up there and bam, you just got stopped. And anyway, that's, I think now that we know that, or think we know that they are part human, and I do think that's a lot of them are, there could have been a pheromone that stopped us.
To bring us back to the animal sapient discussion, one thing that's kind of probably hard to rectify is that here we have something that's coming into one's camp, people's cabins, camps, and foraging for food and building stick structures that can also travel between dimensions. So I assume that this, I think traveling through dimensions, I automatically associate with technology. And then this situation, it seems like we're not dealing with technology.
No, we're not. And I don't think we can put them all in one box like that. We didn't look for stick structures. There may have been some up there, but we weren't looking for that. We weren't looking for, we was just wanting to experience what we were experiencing. So
sure,
people ask me, well, did your horse's hair get braided? Because that's another thing they say they do. Oh, right. I don't know. I used to just say, well, they ran into a tree and it messed their hair up or something. But I wasn't looking for that. None of us were. We were there for the big deal. We were there to experience them and to try to learn something.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how do we suspect that they are achieving the traveling from one dimension to another? Is it a physical ability, or is it a spiritual ability, like meditation wise, or is it a technological ability?
I think, and this is totally what I think.
Totally speculative at this point. I realize
you can't write it down in stone and pass it on your grandchildren,
right? Yeah.
Unless it's proven out, But I think they are able to alter through their vocal mechanism, which I think they probably have more than 2 vocal cords. We have 2, and I think they're able to do that to make those sounds they made. Sometimes like I said earlier, we thought our camp was being tore apart, everything was being strung out there, and you look out there out the shelter door and nothing's changed. Well, did they hypnotize us all, or how did that happen? Did we hear into another dimension, or were they able to create that sound with their vocal mechanism? I was told a few years ago by a medium, which again, you can take that for what it's worth, but that they have 7 vocal cords. And if they have 7 vocal cords, they can make pretty much any sound. And we've experienced all kinds of sounds up there that are just not classical. It's not like we can understand. So I think they're able to change their matter via frequency into energy. And that's what people see when they see the predator look. And then David Pilates' 411, where he features me for about 15 minutes in there, The Hunted. He shows a lady, after my segment, there's a lady who experienced that same thing. And I know some people that have experienced that too. And it's like you see, I've talked to a lot of people that said this. They see the Bigfoot going away, and then they see it just like vaporize or change. And all these people, I just don't believe they're lying to me. They're not. I know personally some of these people, I know they're not lying. They've seen, at least they think they saw what they're telling me. And there's a way that can happen, and it's through, I think, the 4th dimension, and they're probably seeing the plasma field. Depends on the temperature. And once you get out of the 4th dimension, which is time, light, I think they have to go together, time and light. And before you get into the 5th dimension, that's also where I think people see ghosts. You can see it if the temperature's right, and it's usually at nighttime when the vibrational frequency is down. Our frequency changes at night too. That's why the witching hour is like 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. Earth's frequency changes. The Schumann resonance, I think, says the Earth is 7.83 hertz. That's the frequency of the Earth. And our frequency, if you get into alpha state of awareness, is right at that same point, and you drop off from the beta state that we're in now, which is total awareness, and you get into the alpha state, which is just relaxed, not analyzing things, and just you're drifting off, but you're not asleep. Then you go into the theta state, which is sleep, and that's where Tesla said he got a lot of his answers to his questions. Is when he comes out of his sleep, he'd write them down, because you get a lot of answers in that other dimension when you're not trying to analyze things with our three-dimensional environment with your eyes.
So
this is fun talking about this stuff.
I do it at least once a week.
I do it every day. I was on another program this morning. I got another one day after tomorrow. It's fun,
It is, and it makes
exciting.
It makes me wonder, and a lot of it is mashing it up, So over the years, most of us have been exposed to Bigfoot sightings of walking and seeing something move, or hey, we caught this. Mm-hmm. As you do your research, how statistically, ballpark it, how many of these sightings that you hear about actually contain spiritual or paranormal elements? Because a lot of the time what we've heard, like on TV and TV shows, is really not a spiritual or paranormal experience.
Right. I would say 5%, maybe 10% have seen them disappear.
I see.
That's.
But of course, when you barely see them, I mean, why would you? Right?
It doesn't mean they didn't. They really didn't report that, because a lot of people, I've questioned people before, and they don't want to tell me that part until finally they realize I got an open mind. They want to tell me exactly what they saw, and they tell me that. So a lot of people have witnessed that part, but they don't want to talk about it because you get into the woo-woo factor, and.
Right.
A lot of people who want to throw you out with a baby then,
I see. That makes sense. The story gets unpalatable at that point, and people start to go, well, and so they stop telling that part.
Mm-hmm.
No, that makes sense. That does make sense.
Yeah, we didn't tell some of the stuff we went on with us up there for a long time, just because it's crazy enough saying you believe in Bigfoot, but then when you say you saw one and you encountered them and you interacted with them and stuff like that, then people really good. So that's why the science behind these recordings we've got is so important. It shows that there's credibility in what we have. We knew what we was dealing with. We didn't know what we knew we was dealing with something unique. But we until you get the science behind it, like Al Berry, he had the initiative to start searching out some academia that would work with us. He went to the people that studied the Nixon tapes first. Of course, they don't do it for free, but they did listen to them and say, whatever made this was spontaneous and it was huge. And they recommended he find some academia and some sound engineer to get the tapes verified that they were real. There's no 60-cycle hum in them, which would have shown pre-recording or re-recording, altered speed, stuff like that. That's all been checked. It's all been noted. Yet you got classical science out here who want to believe these beings are out there, and I know some of them. I've been traveling with them, different places, parts of the world, and I know how they think. They can't get out of their parameters, which says they got to be an ape. And once you make up your mind what they are, you want everything that you hear to fit in that box. And
right.
Unfortunately, you can't be that way if you're going to be open-minded.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is the true definition of wisdom, but I refer to it as intelligence you can only acquire with age. And as I've gotten older, I realize most things do not fit into the boxes that I want them to. Having kids, I know lots of people who they get pregnant and they tell me oh, this is exactly how my kid's going to be. And I'm all, no, it's not. It is not going to be like that. Your kid is going to be the way your kid wants to be, and you have very little to do with it.
Kids would change your life.
They will.
Told my son that. I said, you're fixing to know love like you've never seen love before, when you have your own children. And that's when you'll do anything, to protect them.
Yep. You get to know what it feels like to give and not receive unconditional love.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Ron, I am a huge horror fan that anybody who knows that listens to this. So I have to ask every guest that has ever had any experience. So I'm not trying to throw any shade at the Bigfoot. What is the scariest encounter you've ever had with a Bigfoot? You know, where you just thought this might be it. Or has it happened?
Well, I haven't. I think fear is your enemy, and I try to pride myself in not being afraid of things. And so I knew they hadn't eaten the Johnsons, they hadn't carried anybody away. And when I went up there with Donald, the guy that wouldn't go back by himself, that's how I got in the group. And the guys were a day late coming out from a hunting trip, and so that got me involved. And I knew that they hadn't. He showed me the track. He showed me something they had recorded, and that got me all enthused, because we didn't know if he was after a monster or what was going on up there.
Right.
But anyway, I don't know that I've ever been afraid where I've just been jumping out of my boots or something. You can't help but be concerned when those sounds are right outside your shelter like that. Sure. By the way, I have my little laptop here, and I do have some sounds on there that I use in my PowerPoint program. I don't know how they come through here, but we could try one if you want to.
Why don't you send them to me, and I will edit them in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
And after the completion of our show, Ron was nice enough to send in those recordings, so let's give a listen to those right now. These are Ron's recordings of Bigfoot sounds in the wild.
Right there, just seen movement right through there.
First ones were very aggressive sounding, and you could hear these chattering back and forth, and very, very dominating, some of them. And then years later, it's 1974, we ride in camp, my friend and I, we were taking our horses in to pick supplies in, and these things started interacting with us. I pulled out my little recorder out of my saddlebag and started recording what went on. And that's when I interacted with them, and that's probably the most exciting thing I've had happen. And that's the night I got to see one, flash by me. And so I got that recorded, and I'll send that to you. But over the years, from 71 through 76, we had recordings going on, and I got an archive of a lot of them, but these are probably the better ones that I've got on my CDs. And I produced CDs with the sounds, and narrated one by Jonathan Frakes, Star Trek, The Next Generation.
Awesome.
And then that's about 40 minutes long, and we've embedded the sounds in that. Al Berry wrote his story. I produced it, and we got Jonathan Frakes to narrate it. And
got number one. You can't. It doesn't get any better than number one. Yeah.
And then the second one I produced a few years later. Al Berry recommended it because it's got some really different sounding sounds on it. I've got the beating sounds. They rhythmically beat. The whooping sounds. A lot of people hear them whoop. Different intonations of whoops. And this is the night I saw one, so we know what was going on then. And they've also got what they call, they've coined the samurai cry, which is a big cry of one of them. That's when I seen him run down by me there. And so those are very interactive sounds. The other ones weren't so interactive. They were just aggressive sounding. So that's the first and the second one. I've offered two CDs. I narrate the second one, and save myself a lot of money that way.
Right. This makes me think of two questions. We were talking about a scariest encounter. And you said that you really haven't had one, so I got to ask, how many encounters, once again, of course, we're ballparking statistically off of your research. You talked earlier about a guy who was like abducted for 6 days. How often are encounters violent? And well, I don't know if violence the right word, but I mean, obviously being abducted is not comfortable.
Confrontational.
Yeah. How often are they, I don't know, people get abducted? How often do people get abducted, I guess, is what I should be asking.
Who comes back and tell you about it?
Yeah, it's a good point.
I mean, I tell people, if they tear one of your arms off, start beating over the head with it, they're probably not friendly.
Right. Yeah.
There are friendly ones and there are malevolent ones and good ones and bad ones. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
The good ones are a lot of people report. And a lot of people think they're in the fuzzy woo-woo camp, and everything's fine. They plant flowers and give them candy bars. But I don't think you can be that way about it. You can't type them all the same. And again, you won't know the bad ones, because if you read any of David Pilati's 411, you know that a lot of people turn up missing. There's not accounted for them. He's not saying at all that Bigfoot abducted them or that a UFO abducted them, but something happened that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And so you can draw your own conclusion from reading his books. So I don't know, how many of these people just walked off the edge and never were found again. Animals ate them or whatever. But there's some interesting reports in his books about people who aren't seen anymore, so they can't give you a report.
Right. So, one thing that's going to pop to anybody's mind who's hearing this for the first time, hearing about, I mean, everybody's heard of Bigfoot, but anybody who's digging into the topic for the first time, is there any scientific evidence that he exists? We see shows where they DNA a chunk of meat, or they have a chunk of hair they snipped off a scalp in Nepal or something. Is there anything
physical evidence? I think
exactly. Is there any
as opposed
physical
to eyewitness reports?
Yeah.
Well, a geneticist, Melba Ketchum, did a study a few years ago, and she had 108 samples. I know some of the people who are involved in it. David Pilates was one of the guys involved in that, and another ex-officer close by me here was involved in it, in the Genome Project. And really, she came back with the mitochondrial DNA, which is the maternal side, is mostly human. And then you get into the nuclear DNA, which tells you what the male counterpart was, and they couldn't match them. And that's out of 220
that's strange.
billion gene bank that couldn't be matched. So her whole report was foo-fooed by the academia because they wouldn't accept that. If it's existing, it has to be in a gene bank, right?
Right.
But they're in their box, and I understand that. So I think she's going to be vindicated, to be honest with you, because you got another study that went on above Bhutan in the Himalayas, 17,000 feet. National Geographic sponsored that, and this geneticist up there, out of some eDNA, which was bipedal prints from the 17,000 feet. No human had been there walking around barefoot in snow, ice. And the eDNA, a couple of years later, when she got through the study, the eDNA, or the mitochondrial DNA, was mostly human, 99% human. Couldn't identify that nuclear. So there's some corroboration, but science won't get it. They won't take that. They won't accept it because they're in a box. And I think what I try to encourage is that classical science and quantum science has to combine. They can't ever get a handle on this thing if they're going to be so close-minded they stay within the parameters that they've been disciplined in. And that's where it's at right now, I think. And I've seen these professors just say thumbs down with Melba Ketchum's report, but I think they should back up and just say, we don't know yet. And that's the best thing I think a scientist do, say, we don't know. So many of them think they got to be an ape because that's what they look like. They're running until they see one face to face, and there's a human look to them. I've talked to a lot of people that have seen them face to face, and they said they got a really human expression on their face.
Yeah, well, isn't there just an obscene large percentage of DNA that we match to chimpanzees or bonobos or one of those, where we're like 98% match. And if that's the case, I mean, apparently 2% can go a long way because
yeah, well, it gives us our sapiens, right?
Because I got to tell you, if you put it into just realistic terms that we can all digest, a chimp for me, undateable. And so if it's this 2% has gone to the point where, I'm not going to hang out with this thing.
You
obviously,
took that to a weird place, John.
You get where I'm going with this, though. The 2% can create such.
How you made that point?
Okay. I'll bring it up in counseling, though.
You're just monkeying around, right?
That 2% can create such a difference that when I look at something, I say that has nothing to do with this. And so obviously these small things that they're discarding because they're not in their registry could make that massive difference that when we look at it, we say that is not this and we should run.
Well, so
the evidence you pointed to just now, it sounds like that's a major piece of support for your sort of theorizing that
if you're ready to accept it. Again, academia is not ready to accept it because it doesn't fall within their parameters, and that's too bad because they need to just be a little more open-minded and look into some of this stuff.
I guess if we're talking hybrid, the question is hybrid with what?
Yeah, well, there you are. I mentioned that earlier. You got a primate out there, maybe an orangutan or something like that, and you got an alien messing with the DNA of that thing, giving it its sapience, and there you have part human. Or you got them manipulating the DNA, whichever way they go. I just think there's so much advanced intelligence that we have no comprehension of how high it can go and what they can do. If they can travel through space in a spaceship and go across the galaxy like that,
of course, technology is.
Yeah, it gets you into Star Trek and all that stuff. And
magical.
By the way, I like Star Trek, but I don't get my stuff from Star Trek.
No, of course not. Of course. Sorry, go ahead, Kara.
This just raises a topic which we haven't really talked about yet concerning this, which is, let's just assume these are hybrids we're talking about. Why do you think these creatures are being created, basically? Is it a science experiment? Is it...
Some of it might be.
What is it?
I think it's a hybridization into the Earth's atmosphere, into the Earth.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess you did mention that earlier. So it's sort of a form of like getting a version of these aliens.
Getting their species to survive, because this species that we're in right now, you and I, is probably not going to survive. I mean, something's going to happen. That's fair. I'm not a negative person, but we're killing ourselves. It's horrible. We don't know.
That's just true.
Don't know
unfortunately,
the bit of it. What's really going on. We only know what we've been told and what we're trained to learn. And no, I think we're going to probably, and these things will survive. They don't require a house. They don't require what we think we have to live in this environment. The Earth is a jewel, though. I mean, it's got the gold. It's got the minerals that aliens need. It's got so much. It's a beautiful planet, and we're screwing around with it.
So in some ways, the fact that these creatures are sort of outwardly primitive, you might say, is maybe a sign that they're actually more advanced.
Not any animal might be more advanced.
Physically better adapted, maybe.
There's a good word. Well, a lot of animals do adapt, and that's what the classical researcher thinks, is they've just adapted into not cloaking, but into like a octopus would do, or a squid, or a cuttlefish. They can cloak into the environment, and you won't even see them. I'm a scuba diver too, and you see you won't even see a octopus unless you scare it and it moves away.
Right. Yeah.
You just camouflage. And
one of the things in my life that will go down is those memories. Like maybe you have 10 memories in your life that you will always remember. One of them is the first time I even saw a video. It wasn't even live. It was a video of a cuttlefish. The first time I saw that, I looked at it and I'm all, I did not know that this was even possible. This thing is flashing. This thing is changing. And,
right in front of your eyes. And there's a guy named Shane Land who's from Alaska. He's written a book. I wrote the forward to it. And it gets into what I'm into, the quantum part of it. He's got a theory on possibly their hair has the same type of attribute where where it reflects light around them, which it could be true. And again, you can't throw them all into one box. Some of them can do what others can't do. I think some of them can talk. Maybe some of them they've been diluted down from indigenous crossbreeding over the years, of the eons, I should say. Native American lore says that, they used to take their women and they've just been diluted down. Some of them are more human-like than others. What we were dealing with up there might have been pure alien. Who knows? They were big, had big feet, big voice.
I can't talk about aliens without bringing up intention. So, we were talking about the hybrid. Okay, a hybrid between what? Another question that goes along with that is why? And off the top of my head, I can really think of two ways that people tend to go with this. People tend to go, okay, well, we were slave labor. Or this is a 2001 Space Odyssey situation where they're perpetuating life. But if it happened eons ago and we're still here, was it a fourth? I realize we're well under the realm of speculation, but was it a forethought, or why would they? Was it a failed experiment? Do you get what I'm saying? It's like,
I love this. Let me say what I think.
Okay.
Another drink, I'll take exactly what I think.
Yeah, I will.
Seriously, I believe in evolution. The troglodytes have evolved, and we've evolved into a human-like hominid. But I think aliens have played with that, and over the eons, these troglodytes, we're a troglodyte. I think a special entity, a special alien, and I'm an alien. How do you like that word? Let's call it God, okay?
Right.
He created us as sapient beings in his image. So we are to have dominion on this earth. And my book says bringing science and spirituality together. If you look at a lot of things that are written, you don't have to take the whole thing, but take what fits, because it fits so well in my mind anyway. We are children of a special alien, God. And I think we are not supposed to be messed with. And other aliens who have visited this earth, I've got evidence of that in Peru when I've been down South America a few times. And I know they've been here. They've done things that we still don't understand, these megalithic structures and all. So there's a lot going on that we just need to study and look into. I've been doing this for 50 years now, and they've mineralized. They like, you look at, I've flown over the Nazca lines too, and you see some of these plateaus. It wasn't just sloughed off the dirt to make them flat for an airstrip. No, that dirt's gone. It's like, where'd it go? Al Berry is a geologist, a master geologist. He looked at that. He says, how'd they do that? The dirt is gone. It's just gone. And so you see that stuff, and you see the megalithic structures, how they were put together, formed like jigsaw puzzles, hundreds of ton rocks that are just put together with no mortar. And you can't help but open your mind up a little bit and understand that there's so much more happened in the past. This stuff's been discovered all over the world, really, not just in Peru and Bolivia. That's where the elongated skulls we found, where we didn't find them, but we studied them.
Right.
Those two different scientists down there, they had like 28 to 30% more brain matter than we have as Homo sapiens. And so where the DNA says they were part human, but again, they come from Asia. How'd they get to Peru? This was 3,000 years ago or better. I'm getting off subject here a little bit. So
no, I get where you're coming from. coincidentally, just today I got my 23andMe back. I'm adopted, and I got 23andMe, so I could find out some of this stuff. And and part of, I was a little surprised, although I've heard part of what showed up was how many Neanderthal traits are.
What percentage are you? 3 to 5 to 1, 2?
It was something low,
it's all low.
But it's always low. So I don't know within the realm of what it was. Maybe.
Or do you know your blood type?
I am O positive.
Oh, well, that's pretty common.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
You're in good shape then.
Yeah. But it's really eye-opening.
Alarming.
Yeah, I guess this is, you got to immediately ask the question: which blood type is not in good shape?
Yeah, what if it's an AB? What? Okay.
That's funny. Okay, so another question that I always think of when I think of anything sapient. It's my word of the day, apparently. I've struggled for it in the past, and here you gave it to me, so I'm sure I'm going to use it from here on out. Do we know anything about their culture? You say that this guy was kidnapped for 6 days, and that there's research and maybe some stick structures. Do we know anything about their culture? Like when he saw them hanging out, did they seem to be hanging out? I wouldn't even know what to imagine that to be like.
Well, a good report on that is the one John Green did in Apes Among Us. That book can be, and you can read the whole interview that he did with Albert Ostman. Albert Ostman experienced this in 24, but he wasn't interviewed until the 50s, early 50s, when John Green interviewed him. I'm a pilot too. I have my own airplane. I flew up into Toba Inlet where he was supposedly captured, trying to recreate maybe where the path he went looking for where he was kept, because he was hauled off on this Bigfoot's shoulder for, I think, 3 hours and kept for 6 days. He gives a good report on what they were doing. They were eating, how they were eating. They were chattering. The kids were playing. There's 2 adults and then 2 adolescents, a male and female adolescent. So he didn't know if he was there for breeding purposes or for eating purposes, or if I say eating, I meant if it was going to eat him or breed him.
Right, yeah, no, I got where you were going with it.
But he knew something was messing with him. He knew something was messing with him at night, so he took his chewing tobacco, which he put in the sleeping bag because he thought it was probably a varmint of some type and might get his stuff. So he put a few things in his sleeping bag, and that night he got carried off. So he had this can of chewing tobacco, and that's how he escaped. The big male was watching him one time because just one spot of this bowl that he said he was being held in, a 10-acre bowl. And he gave the thing some chewing tobacco. It got sick because it swallowed it. And that's when he shot off. And he talks very detailed about going this canyon, that canyon, this river, that river, where he came out. And just an interesting story. And one that if you want to research it, that happened. And then you got the Fred Beck story at Mount St. Helens, same year, 1924. And he claimed he shot one dead on. He didn't miss it. It fell off. He went back to look for the body, and they couldn't find it. He claimed to this dying day that they were paranormal because they would find tracks, because they knew these things were around, these miners at Mount St. Helens. And that's why it's called Ape Canyon now, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And,
well, I guess, yeah, sure. I live.
And that's it's written. It was in the newspapers. He went in with like 30 deputies or something trying to search this and do something about it. And anyway, he claimed that they were just something supernatural about him. So who knows? We won't know necessarily everything until we change from our matter into energy and pass to another form. Hey, that was a good one. That's what happens, by the way.
Well, I certainly hope it does. That's for sure. That is my hope, at least.
Well, according to physics, it does.
Well, yeah, I guess it does no matter what on some level, but I'm hoping it's a form that I can enjoy.
You don't want to come back as a bobcat or something.
Right. Yeah. Bobcat's all right. I don't want to come back as a chihuahua or a lapdog. I don't know. Maybe I do. I don't know.
I think you have to come back. Well, never mind. It doesn't matter.
Going on. With, Bigfoot, and its connection to aliens. Do we think that Bigfoot is currently interacting on any way with these aliens? Do we have any reason to think that? We're making the assumption that they're connected on a hybridization level. We're making the assumption that abductions and stuff happen because we're believing the accounts. So do we have anything that ties the two together as far as experience?
We have a 1888 report. Actually, it's out of Reading? No, not Reading. It's where you're at. Eureka, Arcata area.
Yeah, it's close.
A rancher and some Indians saw this big UFO. They didn't call it a UFO. And 3 crazy bears got out of it. And that's and ran off. You've also got reports that 20% of UFO sightings have a Bigfoot in them. That's pretty alarming. I interviewed a guy just in 2009.
20% of UFO sightings.
20% of Bigfoot sightings have UFOs.
20% of Bigfoot sightings have That's a big number, especially because if somebody were to catch me, and I know this is a ridiculous comparison, but if somebody were to see me while walking around town, it would be way less than 20% that I was within eyeshot of my car, which arguably the UFO is the Bigfoot's car if they're together, and 20%, that is a really high number.
It is. I got that off of some newspaper, Huffington Post or someplace in my research. And I thought that was pretty alarming too. I had no idea, but I was going to mention, I did interview a firefighter last year who had to get a hold of me because he'd experienced not too far from where our camp is. I say not too far, probably 15, 20 miles as the crow flies. And he'd been experiencing a Bigfoot, but he thought he better get a hold of somebody that could help him explain something else that happened to him. Hunter, very credible guy. And he actually seen a UFO at the same time hovering over this mountain in the daytime. He watched it for probably 30 minutes, and it's connected with a Bigfoot. He's seen the Bigfoot come out from behind a tree. He had ran a deer across this meadow, and the deer just froze just like that and shot back beside him. And he might be listening to this program right now. I better be careful. I won't tell his name, though. But he said that doesn't happen, so he figured there was something over there. So he starts looking, and this Bigfoot comes out and stands there. He said, I seen his leg and I seen his body, and he said it was huge. It had to be at least 4 foot wide in the shoulders and 10, 12 foot tall, huge one. And that's what we've had up at our camp, those big ones like that. And he said it just walked off. But what he wouldn't tell me until later on when he got to know me is that one leg he didn't see cloaked into another leg. And I said, well, how big was the tree it came behind? He said, that's the strange part, too. It's only 2 foot round, the tree he came from behind. However, if they are energy and they are cloaking like that from mass to energy and energy back into mass through their vocal mechanism, which is my theory, they could actually energize within the tree because it takes energy. Some of these pops you hear, which I've heard, not just a banging on a tree, but a pop, a real loud crack. It's their energy, I think, and it's coming possibly out of a tree. I've had other people tell me, that even the Native Americans say they live in trees. They live in 2 worlds. Well, where do you go with that?
Yeah.
So when you're saying the pop, I'm not a learned Bigfoot. And it's funny. So when we deal with biology, there's mainstream science and then there's cryptids. And then we get down to Bigfoot and everything's divided. There's mainstream Bigfoot and then there's other Bigfoot. In mainstream Bigfoot, they referred to it as knocking. And on the shows and stuff, you'll see them knocking on something with wood. That's what you're referring to, right? That's
what I'm referring. I know they do that. I mean, I witnessed that. I've recorded that. It's on my second CD. The wood knockings rhythmically too. But I'm saying in 2011 when I was up there, I was, well, I like to say this. I went in by myself, which I'm not supposed to do, shouldn't do, because you don't know what you're dealing with still. But I've been up there 3 times with the cryptolinguist trying to corroborate some sounds again, and nothing happened while he was there, except our batteries were going dead. So there's definitely something going on with the energy of these things. But I went up there by myself. I had a guy scheduled to go with me, but he backed out the last minute. And I got to tell you, the mosquitoes were so bad, I had set up this little tent, got inside of it, and was trying to be at peace in the daytime. And I heard this crack outside. It sounded like a gunshot going off. In my book, The Voices of the Wilderness, I relate that as a wood knock. But I've wondered now, it was so loud, it was like a gunshot going off right outside my tent. And I've thought, and since then, I've talked to people, different people, who say they've seen them come out of trees and go into trees. Well, that really sounds out there. I know it does. But
it does, but even with a gun, what we're really hearing is the tiny equivalent of a sonic boom. So it's like...
Yeah, and I just think it could be the energy transferring one from one to another. Not everything is a tree knock. And I've never heard of anyone who has seen one hitting on a tree. Not even me, even though I've heard them doing it when they were around, but I've never saw that. So who knows? There's so many mysteries still tied up in this field of Bigfootology, I call it.
Bigfootology. That's perfect. And there's nothing I love more than a mystery. And we've really had, I don't know, we've been doing this for almost 3 years, I think. And we've had like 2 or 3 Bigfoot guests on. And this has definitely been the most engaging one. Okay, this is the only one that I've enjoyed. All the other ones.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We're not gonna get
but
that.
there's something about Bigfoot, and there's something about aliens. Not aliens, ghosts. Bigfoot and ghosts are the two that we all seem to know somebody who's experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really sort of the fun of these topics. So it's been a lot of fun having you on the show. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Ultimately, we've been talking about your book, The Quantum Bigfoot, Bringing Science and Spirituality Together. Will you take a second and tell our audience where they can get their hands on that and where they can find out more about you?
Yeah, ronmorehead.com. That's Morehead, ronmorehead.com. And they can find all both my books, The Voices of Wilderness, which has a CD, downloads, or you can get the actual CD if you want it. With it. So when I get to the context of sound, it's my chronicle of doing this for 40 some odd years. And that's available on my website, along with my CDs. And the Quantum Bigfoot also is available on Amazon. And I sell a lot of downloads. You can download any of this stuff too.
Well, it's really been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, thank you.
We have had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's fun. I enjoy it. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And earlier you brought up, isn't this fun? And I have a hard time sometimes connecting with people who like the things that I like, because they tend to get so serious that they don't recognize the fun. Don't get me wrong. You can believe wholeheartedly while also enjoying the mystery of something. And I really appreciate that. Great way to put it.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure being with you.
All right. You've been listening to Ronald Morehead here on Radio Wasteland.
Sierra Sounds.
Welcome to the Radio Wasteland. Hello, my darling. Welcome to the